For many of us, childhood is the time we associate with freedom, friendships, and exploration of the world around us. For some, it's simply the time when they were dependent on the grown-ups in their lives. One thing we can all agree on is that it is a period of development, a journey or metamorphosis into the adult shape in which you are meant to live most of your life. But what if you never truly grow, never reach your designated form? Does eternal childhood make you formless? Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today we have an especially blasphemous chapter of my series called O Mother, where we discuss motherly figures of the lands between. I did a lot of research for this one, and I will share some of my favorite theories in this video, so I hope you will enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed writing it. If you want to know more about the cult of Magna Mater, the Mother of Gods, its sanguine rituals of bloodshed and parallels with the story and the worship of the Mother of Truth and her consort, and of course lots of speculations regarding the certain needle-obsessed demigod, then I got a video for you. I'm gonna leave the timestamps in the comment section so you can skip to whichever topic you're most interested in or indulge in madness in its entirety. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Do what you gotta do, baby.
If you decided to watch this video, most likely you know who Miquella is. The demigod child of Queen Marika the Eternal and Radagon, the champion of the House of the Earth Tree. Miquella was born along with his twin sister Malenia. Both children were cursed and both were titled Empyreans, vessels suitable for a god. These two characters share a strange power dynamic where the actually sick sister protects her brother and becomes his sword. While they are both Empyreans, only Miquella seems to have pursued the intellectual and spiritual journey to godhood, and Malenia, despite having the same potential, settled with the role of his protector. Is the eternal youth really something that needs such attention? It seems like there is something more. Both Miquella and Malenia to me seem like allegories for very real deadly diseases. In ancient Greco-Roman mythology, Thesis or Thebes was the Gnosis or the evil spirit of rot and decay. Thesis is also the name of the White Death or tuberculosis, the disease known to humankind since antiquity. Malenia's withering and high infectivity of her sickness strengthens this connection. Miquella's affliction, the fact that he was losing blood and that it was ever fresh, suggests he had a disease known as hemophilia. It is a very serious condition known to have affected the royal families of real world. It is also carried by Mother, something that in the game is underlined in the dialogue with Count Emir. The name of the disease, hemophilia, translates into the love of blood. The Mother of Truth desires a wound. In this video, I'll start speculating quite early, so let's quickly agree on something for the sake of this discussion. Although the twins are said to be cursed, one with the plague of scarlet rot and another with eternal childhood, I argue they were simply born Empyreans. There is a clear distinction between the shameful curse that earns you a life in Leyndell catacombs and the condition of these two demigods. Being an Empyrean means serving as a vessel, the vessel for an outer god. There is a certain pantheon of gods in the lands between that preside over different aspects of life, the pantheon that was worshipped before the monotheism of the Golden Order. Some defeated, others forgotten, these gods do not cease the attempts to take their power back. We will talk more about them soon. But right now, what I want to make clear is that Miquella and his royal family were as aware of what outer god found their temple in his body as they were of Malenia's scarlet rot succession. The proof that Miquella was aware of his condition since the early days is the remembrance of a god and a lord. Not only did Miquella wish for his brother to become his lord and protector in godhood, but what I find most interesting is the fact that it's also Radagon's kindness that stood in contrast with Miquella's affliction. It's hinted a lot in the main game and especially in the DLC that kind Miquella had, well, troubles reciprocating other people's emotions. So what I wonder is, was the Age of Compassion and even his title really what Miquella envisioned for the world, or simply something he desired to have? Does being the vessel for a deity mute your own consciousness or other two conflicting entities inside the Empyrean body? The unquestionable love and acceptance of the Age of Compassion surely seems very motherly. And not only was he aware of his Empyrean status, but also, as I mentioned, I am confident that the nature of his affliction was no secret for his family. Born alongside the reincarnation of the god of rot, the plague that corrupts everything it comes in contact with, Miquella was never affected by it. There are two possible explanations for it, and both are connected to blood. The description of the sacred bloody flesh reads, "The blood is said to have fallen from the Formless Mother's wound. Never will it dry, never will it rot. The youthful blood that allegedly comes from the ever-young demigod that nurtured the sacramental buds is said to be fresh, despite the buds being cultivated long ago." Is Miquella's never-drying blood connected to that of the Formless Mother? Second possibility is revealed by the beast blood, the glimmering liquid that never rots or decays. The blood of the beasts contains small golden particles, and as we know, the beasts are the creatures from the ancient era of the Crucible, which itself was golden. Both the idea that Miquella's blood never dries due to his connection to the Mother of Truth, and the theory that its high amount of golden particles in his blood inherited from his godly mother that pretends it from clotting, are legitimate, but I incline towards the first one. Now that we've discussed young Miquella's condition and possible possession by the Formless Mother, do you still think his research, both as the scholar of the Golden Order fundamentalism and later of the unalloyed gold, was really for the sake of his sister? Since his childhood, kind Miquella studied and excelled at the principles of the Golden Order. It is said that, although grateful to his father, Miquella abandoned fundamentalism for it could do nothing to treat Malenia's accursed rot, and that was the beginning of the unalloyed gold. The most recognizable symbol of that time period in Miquella's life were the needles he created. They're definitely medicinal in nature and appear to be a progression of the concept of the bewitching branch. In general, the idea of piercing another person with a needle when you know it personally may be deadly for you seems like a cruel experiment. And indeed kindly Miquella's experiments were vicious, for what he manipulated was the person's psyche. We learn from the bewitching branch that he would compel others' affection. In her quest, Millicent, an offshoot of Malenia, says the following: "I took out the needle myself. Tell whoever put you up to this, that if I am to flower into something other than myself, I would rather rot into nothingness as I am." She mentions that she needs to return to Malenia her dignity and sense of self, while the unalloyed gold needle in her body was driving her away from her true nature. Do y'all follow my logic? Millicent took out the unalloyed needle because she did not wish to bloom into something she's not. Under so-called care of Miquella, Malenia bloomed twice, each time getting closer to the full transformation into the goddess of rot. And it is factual that the second time the scarlet blossom erupted in the fields of Caelid, Malenia was there on her brother's accord to deliver the message to his desired consort. It's highly speculative, but in my opinion, Miquella experimented on his sister, coming from the perspective that their affliction might be of a similar nature. The needles he created were meant to ward away the meddling of the outer gods. The particles of gold, as we know, prevent the beast blood from clotting, so the nature of this experiment seems to be focused on Miquella's condition. He disposed of Malenia as he knew she would not recover from the third blooming, and went ahead with another plan that he most likely discovered in Elphael, the ancient fortress that conceals the secrets of life and death, the cycle of life sealed away by Marika's order. For if you cannot purge the outer god, The only thing left is to become an entirely new deity. Miquella purposefully discarded his body in the most cruel way, that in turn granted him reassurance that the vessel of the Formless Mother would never be reconstructed. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still have to talk about the self-proclaimed Lord of Blood. It is no secret at this point that Mohg, Miquella's half-brother, was used and discarded by the ever-young demigod as anyone else in his way. Alas, Mohg is not entirely innocent. In the main game, the story was presented to us as if Mohg kidnapped Miquella in his attempt to establish the Mohgwyn Dynasty and become the Lord of Blood. Well, what other proof you need that Miquella was the vessel for the God of Blood then? It is unclear whether it was the shade of the Mother of Truth herself lingering in the catacombs, where all the unwanted creatures of the lands between were imprisoned, or was it the vision of his brother Miquella appearing before Mohg to lure him into his schemes? All we truly know about Miquella after Elphael is that he was stolen in a weak body and put into the cocoon that seems to be made of something resembling the rotten mold that corrupted Elphael. There are two things I wanted to say about it. Elphael is deeply connected to the cycle of life and the only place where we see the imagery of children. Malenia at the same time is one of the very few demigods known to have direct offspring, and it was through her scarlet rod. Miquella's goal was to be reborn, so we cannot ignore the possibility that he may have been actively researching the way to be born anew through these means. Thus he allowed it to corrupt the fortress. But then there is an even better theory. I don't know where exactly Miquella could have learned about it, but living jars. The fly mold that was used for pots' innards is very similar to the one in Elphael and the material of Miquella's cocoon, and mixed with the remains of the shaman's heir, it would surely produce a saint. You know what the only missing ingredient was? The accursed blood. Hornsent, as we know, view the crucible as sacred and themselves as chosen people. The two best choices, of course, were Miquella's half-brothers, but one of them, Morgawd, recounted his blood, sealing it in a form of a blade. And so it was Mohg who would drench his consort's cocoon with his accursed blood to feed it thirst, waiting for his awakening, which, as we know, would never happen as Miquella has long departed for the spiritual realm. Why specifically the accursed blood? To answer this, we need to remember our friend Dung Eater, who was born with the cursed soul of an omen in a human body. Is there anything new you notice about him after the DLC's release? His motives, although powered by resentment, seem to be clear to me now. The accursed blood does not return to the wheel of samsara or whatever the return and rebirth through the earth tree entails. To bear the curse, to grow the horns is the sainthood, the break of the cycle. Nurtured by Mohg's blood, Miquella would not be reborn in the physical realm. Once again, I wanted to underline that, in my opinion, it was kindly Miquella's plan to rid himself of the outer god he was born a vessel for, but it seems like the Lord of Blood Mohg actually did serve the Formless Mother. From the description of the swarm of flies, we learn that the new palace of the Lord of Blood lies in a swamp of festering blood. I wonder where the old palace dedicated to the blood worship was. A tradition that was long lost in the temple complex, now called the Ruins of Rao, seems to connect the rot and the blood loss. But even in the main game, the rose was always the symbol of the Mohgwyn Dynasty. Under the remains of the Church of the Bud, in the realm of shadows, we can find blood fins, and it's the Rose Church in Liurnia where we can be anointed by Vare. Interesting is the way to join the ranks of the Mohgwyn Knights, through the infusion of the accursed blood, the ritual that has ties both to the Hornsent beliefs in sanctity of the curse and to Miquella's medicinal experiments. A new cool detail in the DLC is the character sealed near the Bonnie village, named Rakshasa. It is a name for a bloodthirsty demon in traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism, the malevolent creature that devours human meat. Rakshasa's weapon is very similar to the one of Bloody Finger Okina, a person willingly turned into a demon by Mohg. The ritualistic spear of the Lord of Blood and the sacrament itself obviously evolved from the Bloodfiend's crude traditions. If Mohg shares his blood with his servants to spread the gospel of the accursed blood, for Bloodfiends, the sprays of sanguine that came from the torn limbs of their kin was enough to worship the Mother of Truth. Now let's return to the real world. In my previous videos, I already discussed with you the Anatolian goddess Sibyl, who was during the Roman Empire known as Magna Mater or Magna Mater, the Mother of Gods. We talked about this goddess and her parallels with Metyr, the Mother of Fingers, as well as how the symbol of her offspring Sabazius bears a unique resemblance to the prophets of the lands between. But now is the time to discuss the bloody rituals of Dies Sanguinis and the Mother of God's obsession with her consort that mirrors the fate of Radon. First of all, Sibyl, or the Great Mother, is associated with Rhea, Gaia, Artemis, and many other goddesses, but what we need to keep in mind is that in Rome, she became known as the Mother of Gods and had her own cult following. What follows might sound like a fever dream, but please bear with me, it's Greek mythology, and as weird and tangled as it might sound, Elden Ring draws a lot of inspiration from it. The legend tells us about Actistis, a hermaphroditic deity born of Zeus's nightly incident. Having both female and male genitals, he intimidated the gods, so they schemed to castrate him. He bled, and from the hemorrhage, the almond tree was nurtured. From the almond seed of said tree was born Eris, the long-haired god who was said to be so beautiful that his own parent fell in love with him. Eris was to marry King Midas's daughter, but at the wedding, Actistis, who was also Sibyl, appeared in front of everyone in her godly form. Eris went mad, ran away and castrated himself, and, well, died from bleeding. Actistis or Sibyl were so heartbroken they begged Zeus to make Eris's flesh preserved from ever decaying or decomposing, and so Eris was reborn as the eunuch consort of the Great Mother. And by the way, what does not make things any better is the fact that Sibyl was in theory the mother figure to Zeus, and hence Eris's grandmother. Just in this overview, we can already see the parallels both with the Formless Mother and the hermaphroditic Miquella, who tried to escape from being her vessel through self-mutilation, but also the pattern is repeated again when Radon refuses to become Miquella's consort and the lord to the Formless Mother. Radon is being reborn into another body and forced to be his consort eternal. The cult of the Great Mother was of the great importance and included many celebrations, such as Megalasia, the April festival of Magna Mater, where the procession of the war dancers and the long-haired priests would dance and wave their knives delighted by blood, and scatter the rose petals along the route of the goddess's sculptured image, wearing a crown and seated in a lion-drawn chariot. Or the Holy Week in March, where both Sibyl and Eris were celebrated. The people would be divided into the reed bearers and the tree bearers, and would be allowed to celebrate accordingly. On the first day, they would mark the birth of Eris and gather reeds. On the second day, his death under the pine tree would be commemorated by cutting down a tree. On the third day, the tree would be laid to rest at the temple of the Great Mother. The Day of Blood was the fourth one, when frenzied devotees would whip themselves and sprinkle blood on the effigy of Eris carved onto the tree. The fifth day was associated with Eris's resurrection and aligned with the vernal equinox. The Day of Rest and the ritual washing of sacred items in the river followed. As some worshippers would self-castrate during the celebration, the laws had to regulate the festivals, and so these mysteries were replaced with Taurobolium, the sacrifice of a bull, or Criobolium, where a lesser victim was used. One of the historical accounts describes the bull being dispatched over a pit beneath a slatted wooden floor with a sacred spear, so that the priests emerged from the pit showered in blood. A lot of the symbolism, such as sprinkling the blood on the object of worship, ritual bloodletting and sacrificial showers, the use of the spear, and the celebration of both the mother goddess and her not-so-reciprocative consort heavily remind me of the Mohgwyn Dynasty. TMI warning, but it also makes me wonder if Mohg emasculated himself like the priests of the ancient Roman cult. I mean, it would make sense for Miquella to take such precautions knowing what his half-brother had in mind. And the last historic thing I wanted to share in this chapter is the use of a trident. Obviously, the trident is connected to the Greek myth of Poseidon, but something does not align here. Zeus with the lightning bolt, Hades with the bident, and Poseidon with a trident? Logically, Mohg, the Lord of Blood of the Underworld, should use the bident, and it seems like the third prong of Mohg's spear is in fact a removable detail, something that is true in real-life weaponry. I just think it's really cool and a neat detail to add in a video game. So that is the story that I wanted to tell you today. We discussed quite a lot of wild theories, and there are still many questions left unanswered. Many mysteries I don't know how to approach. Connected to flower petals and blood loss inflicting weapons, the House Hoslow whose tail is told in blood. Does it have any connection to the bloodthirsty deity? And how come the seedbed curse looks so similar to the gravelstone corroded hearts of the dragons? Side note, if you would like to consider the Mother of Truth the vanished god of the Dragon Lord, her desire of wounds and bloodshed aligns perfectly with the notion of devouring the dragon's lesser kin, sanctioned by Placidosax. And finally, as a part of the ancient pantheon, how is the Formless Mother connected to the fell god of the giants? The fire monks and the thorn sorcerers both have ties to the briars of sin, a religious symbol of punishment inflicting wounds on the guilty. The Mother of Truth craves wounds, and the suspicious red star that reveals itself to the punished may or may not be one of her forms. Well guys, that was a ton of yapping. I hope some of my ideas resonated with you today, and maybe you have some theories of your own that you might want to share in the comments. I always read what you have to say, and I'm happy to exchange some blasphemous knowledge. Thank you for listening to me today. Please don't forget to like my video and consider subscribing to my channel. I hope to see you in the next video.